Hi friends, and welcome back to the second day of Global Azure Norway. So my name is Evgeny, and I'm part of Norwegian.net user group, the organizer of this event, and I will be your host for this session. If you have any questions during the talk, please post them to the chat, and I will include them into Q&A session after the talk. So Mattias Lögdberg is our next speaker. Welcome, Mattias, and the screen is yours.
Thank you. Nice. So I will come here and talk about releasing services with love. That's a nice topic to have with you guys. I hope you have enjoyed the previous sessions. I have at least. And let's see how we can do this now. So releasing services with love is all about making sure that you're confident with your release pipeline and your production of services. Today, a lot of things that we do today is more on a service level, and we use much more services than we have in the past. So it's important to have a good, reliable release pipeline because that will then help you and your team to be more productive and do more fun stuff. That's my experience, and yeah, let's see how I can help today and start bringing some ideas into your pipeline. So, who am I? Oops, slideshow. Good. So, my name is Mattias Lögdberg, as mentioned. I work as a solution architect. I've been a Microsoft MVP since 2017. I work at my own company called DevOps Solutions. And if you want to reach me, you can reach me at social medias on anything, and I will try to help you out. I still have some of these materials on my GitHub account, so I will try to update that as well, and I will give you that. Yes. So today I will give you an intro to the setup because this is a setup I've been using in various cases. So I'm producing some YouTube movies as well, and I've been using the same setup for quite some time, so it's common for me. I will go into that and talk about that, and then we will talk a little bit about the release pipeline that we have, and we will talk about ARM templates. Some of you might be familiar with ARM templates, some of you it's new, and some of you are thinking, why not Bicep? And it doesn't matter if you use ARM or Bicep. Bicep is topology above ARM, so this could be achieved with Biceps as well. We will then talk about something called master templates, which is a concept of linking tables, linking templates in order to achieve a bigger release pipeline, much more reliable. We will also do a little bit about the functions and functionality inside of ARM that we can use. Some of them is really handy. Because our release pipeline is not only about getting code out, it's about making sure we have the appropriate keys, that we have access to things that we need to have access to. It's a lot of things, and the more complex Azure becomes, the more complex your solution becomes, the more you need to automate inside of ARM. At least from my perspective, having a more or less fully automated solution makes things a lot easier rather than a big document of manual steps that you want to go through. So we will help out on that, and release fully automated. We will do that as well. So we will check out ARM templates. We will look into release pipelines. We will look into how master templates will help out on bringing simpler pipelines also. And we will do a bunch of releases, and we'll do some tests via Postman, and then we will wrap up and have some Q&A. If you have questions, let them go into the chat window. We can bring them up because sometimes it might be a bit complex. So let's close this PowerPoint because I got one more slide for you. The rest is just demos and whiteboard. So my setup today, as I mentioned before, this is a setup that I've been using a lot. So I have a API management instance. I have a function, and I have a Cosmos DB. Into this, we have an order API. And on top of this, we also have a Auth0 instance that we have a trust. So we have a trust over here. We also have requests going down, and we bring up data all the way back. We got a consumer over here, which will then authenticate, get the token back, and then use the token into the request. Obviously, we have validation, so we will validate that you have a valid token. These things we won't cover today, but it's good for you to know that they are there. What we will cover is that this is called dev, and we have this one in dev. What we will do is that we want to bring in a new API management, a new order API with a trust back to the same OAuth. So we have the trust, same. We have the function, and we actually use the same Cosmos DB, and that's because cost savings from my subscriptions actually. But we have test and we have test. This is what we want to achieve, and we want to make sure that our end user actually can start using test environment in next one. In this case, we will use the same instance, we'll use the same, so we won't need any new token. That could also be one part of the release, but we won't, as mentioned, that will not be part of this thing. So we will try to get this, or we will make sure that this will work, and we will get orders back in our test environment as well. So in order to do this, we will have in DevOps, we will have a bunch of files. So we will have files. This will be code, and it will be ARM templates, and it will be stuffs. Because when this looks simple on this drawing, I mean, if we talk about releasing this part over here, this looks rather simple, but there's some bunch of supporting functionality as well. We usually have an application AI, application insight. We need some storage account. In our case, we also have a key vault. So these supporting services also needs to go. And we will have a release of that as well. So we'll have an infrastructure release that will cover some shared resources. And then we will have the release for the API and the function. So we'll cover all this in this case. So we have a DevOps with files, codes, ARM templates in the repository. And then we have build pipelines. We have one build for infra, and we got one build for our order API. And we also have release pipelines. So we have a release for infra, and we have a release for order API. Sorry for my writing, but I want to make sure that we get this. So this is my DevOps setup. And in this release, let's go to the colors we used. We used red. Sounds good. We have a dev and the dev. So this is what we have today. We will need to create our test. So our test environment should be created over here. That we need to do because we don't have that. And we will use the same build and the same stuff. Our release, as mentioned, the infrastructure will contain of this master template thing. So let's just look into what we actually have in Azure for now. So in our Azure, we got the resource groups. I have a dev API, we got the dev orders, and we got something called dev shared. So this shared is the infrastructure part I was talking about. So in this one, we have an application insight, a key vault, a log analytics, and a storage account that we can use for different things. We then have the API management instance, which is in the resource group called API. So this is our API management instance. And this is what we have in test. In order to create this, we can just go ahead, because I have a folder in here. Let's see if you can see a little bit, at least the infrastructure over here. I have that in VS Code. So in VS Code, if you have been familiar working with ARM templates, you know that they can be really big and really complex, and in the end be a real mess. So this is why we want to talk about this master template thing. So let's go back to the drawing again. So let's just go down here and let's just talk about master template. So an ARM master is a template that actually link other templates. So we have a new template file, and we have more. So we can link a bunch of them. And the idea of this is to actually be able to minimize the ARM templates, that we can reuse them and use the same ones over and over again, because releasing an application insight is not very big. Releasing a storage account is not very big. Releasing a key vault is not very big. But the problem is when all of them is combined, it's getting complex and big. So that's when the master template comes in, because then we can actually keep our ARM templates small. So AI template is the template for application insight. So I can just bring in the 101 sample from GitHub or something like that. Then I can just use it, and it's very, very small. As you can see, it's just this part. And I can go to API management, which is a little bit bigger, but still, releasing API management is still not very big. When it comes to this, it's a lot of properties, because they want a lot of properties and variables. But in the end, the instance itself is small. At least smaller, if you don't have to combine them with everything else. And same goes to log analytics. You can have a really small template, and so forth. And in order to get them in, I have a file here called master. So this master template is also a deployment file. One of the things I'm using it for, so I like when things is easy. So from a release perspective, I don't want 500 parameters in. I want as few as possible. Less is more in this case, because naming standards are often repeatable, and there's a lot of things that is repeatable. And we should use, as I mentioned, we should use ARM to help us getting those keys. So keys for Cosmos, we will use ARM to get that. The keys for Azure Functions, we will get that from ARM. We don't want to needing to add those manually. That will just take time and be complex. We're even going to, I'm going to show you, we're even going to go ahead and grant API management access to Key Vault in the release to make sure that we don't miss anything when we actually do the release. So while we're at it, I'm just going to show you. This is a generic template for adding anything as permissions for to Key Vault. So this Key Vault instance will then have this resource, which is an object ID, which you need to get. And as I mentioned, these functions that's inside of ARM. So we can get the resource ID. We just need to have the resource group name. We need to have the resource group type. So this is for API management is API management /service. Me Microsoft.API management. And for websites, it's Microsoft.web/sites, for instance. And then we have the resource name over here. And then we're using the split function, which might be necessary. And then get the version, and then we get the identity and principles. Then we get the MSI, the managed identity that is used by this resource. And we get that ID and grant access for that right away to secrets in this case. So secrets is the permissions we're granting in this case. You can add keys and certificates here as well, obviously. And I will add the permissions get and list over here. Good. Let's go back to the master. So master template, in my case, I will use the environment as the only variable in that will change, besides using the source token. There is a way of using relative path, but it wasn't when I created this example, so I haven't updated, unfortunately. But then I will create a shared resource group name. I will do that, as I mentioned before. Naming is repeatable, so I know that regardless, I want to have them nice and the same naming, so that's easy to find them and so forth. So I will just add the environment. That's the only thing that will change in my resource group. It's the only thing that would change in my storage account name. Make sure to use to lower when you do something like this, because storage account only accept lower, and you should probably use a string length as well. Same go for application insights. We just add this Lögdberg AI, and then we got environment, and so it goes. And we also, all these templates, they actually create a URL for my template file. So you can see AI template.json. That's the only difference, and that's pointing to this particular file. So when we come into the resources, we can see that we have the key vault in this case. So we'll have the key vault name. We will deploy this in the shared resource group, and we will also use the template link. As I mentioned, we will use a link, and then we would need that key vault template, and we will need a token to get to it. This is actually generated in a pipeline and pushed in. Otherwise, it's just the name of the key vault. That's all we need. You go down to storage, it's the same. Log analytics, it's the same. Application insights, it's almost the same. In this case, we need to actually know the log analytics namespace. This has a dependency to the log analytics. So we need to know the log analytics name, and we also need to have a depends on. So depends on helps us say that, oh, this cannot be run before the other one is completed. So in our case, we need to have the log analytics namespace created before we can create the application insights. And this is because they are related to each other. And that's about it. So we will create application insight, log analytics, we will create storage account, and we will create key vault in one go. So let's go ahead and look at this from DevOps perspective. So let's just go ahead and go to DevOps. So I actually mentioned this earlier. I broke my demo and I fixed it about half an hour before the session, so that's good. But anyway, so I have some repositories, as I mentioned. I have my infrastructure. My infrastructure is only all these templates that I just showed you, and they're just doing this. There is actually, I'm actually releasing this in 2. You don't have to do that, but I'm releasing it in 2. So I have the API management is 1 as well, and it's because I wanted to bring them. I wanted to release them in different resource groups, and in any case, I need to create that resource group. So I did 2 releases. So in that particular, maybe we should zoom in. In this one, we create the API management and we do the key vault permission thing. So we actually have this key vault permission part as well. And I'll show you how that looks in the end. When it comes to pipelines, it's a normal build pipeline. I'm only bringing up code and promoting artifacts and so forth. The interesting part is when we come to infrastructure. Because infrastructure in this case only have 1 stage, as you can see. And we'll zoom in a bit. Let's do something like that. So we only have one stage right now because I want you to be with me when we do next stage. Let's go in and check the tasks. So we have a file blob copy, and this is because we are uploading all the templates that we want to link to ARM. We got the release on shared resources, as mentioned before, and we are adding a few parameters. So we're adding the environment, and then we're adding these SAS tokens and container URI and blob prefix from the blob. We then do the API management, which is the API management master. And in this case, we are sending in the environment as well. That's the only thing we send in here as well. We will create these resources that I talked about. We will actually create the API management instance. We will create, let's just start off with doing this. In this, we have variables to help us out to make this simpler. And we have an environment and a blob prefix. The only thing we need to change actually is the environment. So let's just go ahead and go to the pipeline and clone this one, because now we want to start releasing things. So let's just go test. There we go. And let's just add this as manual. Save. Okay. And what's happening now is that when we have variables that is connected to a scope, so we have this environment, which is dev, and is connected to a scope in dev. When they are that, they will also create a new one when you clone your previous scope. So in this case, I will just change this to test. And we will have that on test scope, and then we press save. That's good. Let's create this release. And I will just ignore the dev one because to save some time, we can just ignore that, and we can go ahead into the release pipeline, and we can just press deploy. So back again, we will execute that 2 master templates, and they will link all the templates, and we will create these 2 resource groups. We will create the test shared resource group, which contains the Lögdberg application insight, the key vault, the log analytics, and the storage account. I'm going to show you, in this case, from the dev version, that the access policy thing I was talking about. Since my API management has a managed identity, I can actually link it right here to make sure that it has the select permissions, get, and list. And we will make sure that that's done as well in the release. And we will create this API management instance as well. The test instance will be empty at first because we just released the infrastructure part. But later on, we will populate it with APIs as well. So we will have this API in the test as well further on. So this API, let's just talk a little bit about it, because that's the next thing coming up, is this yellow stuff again. Now it's black. This part is what we want to release next thing. We want to release this order API, and we want to release the function, and we want to connect everything together. That's what we want to do. And in this case, we will go ahead and let's just go and see how this infrastructure goes. Let's see. So it's copying files. That sounds good. You who have been doing this before know that I have 2 resources in this release that can mess this up. I have a key vault and I have an API management instance. Both of these are, when you delete them, they are minimum of 48 hours until they are deleted. And I run this, obviously, this test earlier, so I hope I deleted everything. If I haven't, we have an issue. But then we will sort that out as well, and then you will learn something about that as well, because you can solve that via PowerShell and via REST APIs. Okay, so shared resources went fine. Let's go back to our resource groups over here. Let's go ahead and press test. Look, we have our resource group. We have our test. So everything looks good. We're missing a storage account, I think. Maybe it's there now. There we go. We didn't have a collision with the key vault at least. Let's hope API management goes as well. Looks good. Let's see. Okay. We should at least have the, let's see, let's press refresh. There we go. The test API resource group. Let's see. Yeah, we got the API test. Nice. So this one should be perfectly clean, perfectly empty. And something that should be done, we should have the managed identity set. Yes, it's on. Perfect. And we should not have any APIs. And we don't. I'm using consumption, by the way, if you are curious how I can release my API management so fast. Because if you're using developer or standard or premium, you will have a 45-minute release time. So, and I won't have time for that in this session. So I'm using consumption, then it goes fast. And next thing up is checking that permission thing that I told you about. So let's just go into our test key vault that is newly created, look into access policies, and making sure no, we have an error. Interesting. The demo gods are not with me. Well, let's see what it is. So we should go to test shared, I guess, and let's see deployments. And there we go, the test key vault. API service does not exist. Interesting. This could happen if my, let's just do a redeploy on this. This could happen if I have a race condition on my service. Sometimes it's ending a little bit earlier than you actually have it, and then it fails. So what I need to do until next time is find something that will stall the deployment until my resource actually is live. I've been doing that for other resources earlier, but maybe I've been lucky with my API management instance. Nevertheless, we will look into that in a few minutes because this will take some time. So let's look into the other part where we want to give in some code and we want to give in this API as well. So let's go into our releases again. This is the OAuth or API that we want to have. Let's just bring in what we have in this one, by the way. So our OAuth, let's just put up a little bit, has an order function with some code in it. So this is nothing fancy. Let's just open it in Notepad or something. I'm just going to show you. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that. I'll open it for real. Sorry. There we go. So let's see. While that's loading, I have an order function and I have an on template for my function. So this is a template and a master template for my function. As you know, we need to first prepare Azure with a function app, and then we can deploy code to it. And after that, we have a fully released function. And we got the API for orders, which also is a master and an API. So just for simplicity, I'm using master even if I just have one. And that's because if I want to change something in my template, it's easier to do that. So that's okay. Let's just bring in my Visual Studio just to show you. Should have opened this in code, I realize. Okay. This doesn't want to show. Never mind. From my, I actually got my Notepad++ up in a way. So this is just very, very simple things. We're just getting the Cosmos DB and HTTP trigger, and then we either query or we put in data. That's all we do. In Postman, in order to do an example, oh, that ended up wrong window. We have our API management instance, and we have this get token as consumer. And let's get the token. I have a script that saves my token back over here, so I can go and get something called get my orders. And let's just press send, and just verify that we actually get the data back from Cosmos. There we go, we got some data. As I mentioned, very simple. I'm not doing anything extra at all. I'm just reading out data. So let's go back to the release pipeline and press edit. So if we go into tasks, we can see that this is a little bit more complex. As mentioned before, we need to copy files. We will then deploy the function, and so the ARM template for the function to create the function app and everything with that. Then we deploy the code into it, and then we run copy again, and then we deploy the API. Here I run a PowerShell script to read the key. I'm not needing that anymore because we can do that via ARM, but that's part of this one. So this is also very, oh, sorry, I wasn't meant to go that far. We also have variables. We got a few more. So in this case, we have the Cosmos DB part, we got environment, and we got function name. So this is actually needed in our ARM to get that token, to get that key. I'm going to show you that. But let's just go ahead and create a environment. So let's just clone this one, clone. And let's name it to test. And let's just do manual, so I don't have to wait for that one. And let's go to variables. And we can see again, if we have the scope part over here, we can see a dev test. And the first one, the blob prefix doesn't need to change, so we will just keep that. But in this one, I want to have the test, because otherwise I will release to the wrong environment. And that's not what I want. I want this to be released to my test environment. There we go. So let's just create a release for this one as well. Let's just remove the automatic trigger to make this go a little bit faster. And let's just press deploy for test. There we go. So let's just make sure that we actually got a good one. Look, now we have the test key vault. That has been okay. Let's go to our, let's just go ahead and make sure. Master API, there we go. This one was succeeded. So it was that part where the API instance wasn't really ready for connecting to the key vault, but it should be now. Now I'm going into my API management instance. I'm just going to go ahead and say once again, this is empty now. We run the release, so we should have something soon. And test shared, we go to key vault, and we make sure that we have those access policies set up. And we do. So look, now is that test policy set. So this is all done automatically. No manual overlay at all, which is important for me. So this one is working out. Let's just go ahead and look to that template for function. Let's go to the order API, and let's go to order function, go to ARM template, and go to the template. So we're sending in the Cosmos DB account and Cosmos DB resource group and a bunch of other things. But what's interesting is actually the parts where we do things more. So application instance stands, for instance, we actually get the instrumentation key and the connection string automatically, because we get the instrumentation key and connection string. This is all ARM. ARM is doing everything. Same goes for storage account. We're getting the keys, the account key. So there's a list key function for storage account, which makes sure that you can load in the keys as well automatically. And we got the Cosmos connection. And in the Cosmos connection, we also need a key. So there's also list keys on Azure, so Cosmos. And then you can get by the resource group name and the database account name, we can get the key to actually use this right away. So we don't have to do anything manual there as well. And we don't need to have it stored in Key Vault. We can just, we could have stored it in Key Vault as well, but in this case, we want to read it out on the fly. And then we release the rest of it in this part. So let's see how our release is working out. So it's working, it's going, and let's check it out. Dun, 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 dun. So we are at deploying code. That's good. Then we should see some things popping up over here. So we should see our test orders. Sounds good. Looks good. We can see the function app. We can see the app service plan. We can see the storage account, which is all needed for our function app. If we go in on our function app, we can see that configuration should be set. We should have that Cosmos DB account connection string. We should have everything set up. So Cosmos connection. There we go. So we got the Cosmos connection. Let's just go ahead and do an advanced edit on that one. So as you can see, Cosmos connection, we got the account key going on over here. So that's added automatically from it. Good. This looks good. Let's see. So function code is set. It will now actually do that function key stuff that we don't need anymore. But let's still go ahead and use it anyway. We are now waiting for our API management to get started, and we get something to that. So that's good. We can start preparing. So let's prepare Postman in this case, because this one is now connected to API dev. So let's switch this to API test. Let's verify what we have for variables in this case. So we have an API management key with test API. So we need to switch this key, because this key is probably not the same anymore since I created a new one. Let's just go ahead and press send. Either we get an error, or we get a resource not found. That's okay. Just making sure that we're not there. So test API. Good. Let's go back. So deploying API. Sounds good. Let's check out the deployments part. So if you haven't used this deployments part, start doing that, because it's awesome. It's a good way to finding errors. You can see what's going on. You can see the steps. As you can see in this case, I have a master template that then loads this test API template, and we can see that they are deploying, or as you mentioned before, we can see these error messages, and they can be better or worse coming information, but still we can see them and we can see what's going on. If we go back to that test share, we had a much better error message, I think. Or is it overwritten? Maybe. Okay. You can actually also go ahead and redeploy stuff. So if you have something that failed, you can actually redeploy them from here as well. I wouldn't do that, but it's possible at least. If you've done something manual in the GUI or something from another template via PowerShell script or something, you can do that. Let's see. Oh, let's look. Our API is done. Let's go back to the test API resource group, and let's jump into our is it just me, or did it load? Strange. Wrong resources in the group. So let's check out the APIs. We now have our orders, and we now have V1, and we have a bunch of stuff. And as I mentioned before, I won't go through this in deep, but we have a bunch of validations that goes on to auth0. We have permissions, we got everything, and all is pushed this way. We're reading the values from the token as well in order to set the customer ID. So this is all added in the release, nothing manual, just pushing it in. It's very simple. And also the connection to our function app is done as well. And if you go back to backends, you can see that this is our released backend, and we can see that we have URL set, and we have authentication as well. So in this case, we are using functions key, and it's picked from named values, which is created on the release as well. So in named values, we also have key, and yeah, there's our secret. That's good. So let's just have a subscription. Let's add one. Test order API, and let's use test order API. Let's only have this for the order API. Sounds good. Add not needed. Great. There we go, and we can show hide keys. Let's just copy that key, and let's go to Postman, and let's go to this one, and let's change the API key. There we go, and press send. Unauthorized. Get token. Let's go ahead and do that one, and get my orders. There we go. I wasn't authorized against auth0, so that's good. It had expired. And there we go, I get my orders as well. So now, just to make sure, I'm going to my test API, and if I switch to my dev API, I then go to my dev API, and I will have a completely different subscription key, and it will work from there as well. And I can now switch back to test. There we go. Works like a charm. So in this drawing, we have during this session, these 45 minutes, we have actually managed to do this. We have created all of this. We have created all of this. We have combined that. We have connected API management to Key Vault. We have connected Key Vault functions to Cosmos. We have also connected API management to Application Insight. We have connected Application Insight to Log Analytics. Everything is done automatically on the fly with the help of ARM. And as mentioned, Biceps is just the same, if someone wonders. And yeah, let's jump into my presentation. So I have one more slide. Key takeaways. For me, if you've been working with ARM templates, you know that it's rather complex. It's fast growth, out of control, and if you're new to it, it's a lot to be learning. If you use this master template version or the setup, where you use smaller templates for each resource, it's much easier to get started because you don't have to understand so much. As you saw today, I failed on some depends on some loading times and so forth. That's happening. When I build this, I usually add some extra logic on the outputs in order to prevent that. So you can add that to your outputs. That's a good one. And I usually also try to build my pipelines so that they are simple to copy between between environments. So in this case, it was really simple that we looked into because I'm deploying it to the same subscription. If you would need to deploy to a new subscription, you will also need to change the subscription ID as well into the release. But otherwise, try to use variables. I didn't go into linked variables so much, but I didn't go into it at all. But that's something you can do also. Variable groups, so you can have a whole set of variables that you just swap between environments. So you have one for dev and test and prod because you might want to have SQL passwords or whatever, a bunch of stuff you might need. And that could be then added in a variable group instead. Let's just fast jump out to that because I was really interested to show you now. And let's just go. So that's actually this library where you can create a variable group. Sounds good. And then I can just add API instance environment. Let's add environment and dev. And then I can add API name. I can add Lögdberg dev API, for instance. And then I can link all of this into my pipeline. So if I go to my release, I can then go in and edit, and I can then link in variables. I can go ahead and variable group, and I can link variable groups, and I can pick them. And then I can pick that to a specific stage. I can set that to dev. Then I can clone this variable group and create a test one, and I can link that to the stage of test. And that's how we can make that also very simple to use with this. When you have more variables that you need to manage, or you want to share same set of variables between release pipelines, because you might have multiple and you just want to define it on one place, then you can just link it here, link it in one by one on each pipeline. Makes it simple and easy. Really good choice. Also, I try to use ARM as much as possible to make sure that I have secrets and I have linking done automatically. Now I use the Cosmos to actually create the connection string inside of the application settings for my function, but I could also do the same, just creating a secret in Key Vault to make sure that I have that secret in Key Vault, and then my function could read that from Key Vault. That would have been almost the same. I just needed to add that create in Key Vault as a snippet into that template. And that's another way of doing it, but I will still use the same mechanism to actually get that secret every time from Cosmos to make sure that I refresh it if I need, and so forth. Also, as I did with variables, I'm rather putting a little bit more work into my naming standards and creating variables inside of my org template based on environments and stuff like that, rather than creating a more complex structure for my release pipeline, because it makes it so much easier to maintain when I hardly don't need to go into release pipelines and change. I just need to go into templates and swap there. Also makes it easier to copy moving along to next release pipeline as well. So I think that's all for me. Don't forget this swag thing, and let's see if we have some questions.
Yes, thank you, Mattias. That was a really good presentation, very good demo. Actually, my heartbeat increased 20 beats because I was so nervous that it might fail. And we can wait a little bit while people come up with the questions. I have actually one from my side, and the question is, in Azure DevOps, there are two types of pipelines that you can build. It's classic, the one that you showed, and then YAML-based or multi-stage pipeline. So what is your experience, and why do you kind of stick with classic if you do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite a newbie to the YAML version. I've done it, especially if I actually in GitHub Actions. But I think I've done so much in the whole classic one, and I really like that environment setup that you can do dev test and prod in that way. But it's mostly because I'm more familiar actually.
Yeah. Yes, so I agree, and I just also want to add that so sometimes people they underestimate ARM templates, but you actually show that you can do much more with ARM templates. You can fix permissions in Key Vault. You can, for example, read the managed identity, and so it's a lot of things. Yes, it's a complicated tool, but when you know how to use it, then actually you can achieve a lot with ARM templates. And the bicep, as you said, it's also simplifying things, how you work with ARM templates. So I was really happy that you showed it today. So
nice. Yeah, I really love it. When you dig in some work into it and do it, I mean, divide it and use these things, it's so easy. It makes so simple. You just press release and everything is working. You don't have to worry that you updated your keys in Key Vault, or you don't have to worry that you actually did your variables or whatever it is that usually comes in handy, and you know that it's going to work every single time. So,
Yes.
yeah, I love it. That's the topic.
Yes, excellent. So it looks like it's no more questions from the audience. Thank you very much, Mattias. It was a really good session, and we will continue in 8 hours sharp. Thank you, Mattias.
Thank you, and reach out if you have any more questions that comes along. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.